He told me, hey, I got something fantastic to tell you. He said, I am affiliated with people that speak with the spirits of the dead. How would you like to talk to the spirit of your dead mother? And I was shocked. I was shocked. He said, you wouldn't be afraid of talking to the spirit of your dead mother, would you? Well, I said, I'll tell you what, I would have to give that some thought, because it's something I never thought about before in my life.
Heart Research Center presents A Trip into the Supernatural with best-selling author Roger Morneau. While still a young man in the city of Montreal, Roger Morneau became involved in the worship of demons. In this two-part series, Roger gives us a first-hand account of his harrowing brush with the powers of darkness and ultimately his divine rescue. Also joining him are Cyril and Cynthia Grossi, the very couple who first pointed Roger from the darkness to the light. Conducting this exclusive interview are Dan and Karen Houghton of Heart Research Center. Let's now join the Houghtons and Roger Morneau as we together enter part one of A Trip into the Supernatural.
How in the world did you ever get involved in praying to demon spirits?
Well, when I came out of the Navy after World War II, I was looking to take up a trade in Montreal, Canada. And at that time, I ran across a fellow that had been on a particular ship with me. And he said, hey, Morneau, you're alive. How nice to meet you. He says, let's have dinner tonight. I said to my boss, can I have the evening off? Because I was the assistant to the Windsor bowling alleys and billiard, you know. It's the high-class place in Montreal where all the dress manufacturing people go and relax. So I got the evening off, and I went out, we went out and had dinner. He told me, hey, I got something fantastic to tell you. He said, I am affiliated with people that speak with the spirits of the dead. How would you like to talk to the spirit of your dead mother? And I was shocked. I was shocked. He said, you wouldn't be afraid of talking to the spirit of your dead mother, would you? Well, I said, I'll tell you what, I would have to give that some thought, because it's something I never thought about before in my life.
Most of us probably haven't. A little afraid of something like that.
Well, he says, you know, it's written all over your face. You're afraid of going to a seance. But he says, I know you. He said, you're going to come. And then he started to tell me how brave I was when I was aboard ship, you know, different things. He says, you're not the same man. You're changed. You're chicken. That's all I needed to hear. I said, when do we go to a seance? So one Saturday evening, we were in the place. It was the very first time. Very beautiful place. The medium was a lady. She had a gorgeous new home in Montreal. And there were about 20 invited guests there, which I was one of them. And she communicated with the spirits for different people there, and telling them what the spirit said. And then there was one lady that had been talking almost continually before the seance started, and she didn't believe in the dead appearing and all of this and all that. And she said, well, I would have to see my dead sister, she says, to believe it. So while this the seance was going, one man said, I would like to talk to my friend that died 6 months ago, but I don't want him to appear. Just want to talk to him, because he says, I don't trust you talking to my friend for me. So the medium says, let me inquire of the spirit. Yeah, the spirit will talk with you. And that big masculine voice was heard in the place. It says, hi, Frank. It's nice of you to ask for me to talk with you. And they had a little chat. And after it was over, Frank says, this is the greatest thing on earth. to be able to talk with the spirits of the dead. Then the medium said, we have a very special surprise tonight for you people. A spirit will manifest itself openly here in a few minutes, and it's like a big gust of wind hit the building and right through the wall. Now the lights weren't terribly bright, but they were like living room lights, a couple of floor lamps and maybe some of these, and that translucent being seemed to come right out of the wall.
How did you feel right at that moment?
It's almost like my heart stopped a little bit. Very weird feeling. So it was a lady in a beautiful evening gown, swirling. And she said to Mary, my dear sister, you are so wonderful to have asked for me. And Mary fainted and fell right off her chair on the floor. And a couple of guys jumped up and picked her up, and spirit gone. And that was the beginning of it.
That's how you got into it.
Yeah, that's the way I got into it. After a while, you see, there's something interesting about the human mind. You can adjust an awful lot of stuff. You can adjust to a lot of things that would terrify you to begin with. After a while, they become common and ordinary.
So you mean contact with the supernatural can become commonplace and ordinary and doesn't bother anybody?
Yeah.
In other words, the more that you do it, you're not uncomfortable.
That's
it's
right.
just not an uneasy feeling.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about it?
Then I
after
got
that?
into a secret society that worshipped the spirits, you see.
Well, how is that different from the seance, Roger?
It happens that the seance are not involving in many ways. But when you get into a secret society of spirit worshippers, then, and especially when you're invited there by the direction of the higher-ups in the spirit world, you never get out of there alive. And this is exactly what my friend and I were up against. We didn't know anything about it. And there was a very, very popular big band leader.
Jazz musician?
Band, yeah. Very famous. He played a lot in Montreal, Canada, Vancouver, the big cities. And one night we went to one of these seances, and he was with his wife. Now the spirits had told him what to do. Spirit told him, there's two of these guys, give the names, and your wife will want to talk, we'll make it so that your wife will want to talk to the medium when you say that you want to go home because you're tired. As soon as you see that these guys are starting to want to leave, then leave with them at the same time. And as you get outdoors, you ask them if they're driving. They'll say, no, they're going to take the tramway a couple blocks away. Well, you invite them to get in your car with you, and that you will take them to a fancy restaurant and treat them to some good food and talk about the merchant navy. And that's what the guy did. And there we were in this plush restaurant, pulled into a little alley, and I can still see it like it was yesterday. Just enough room to pass the car, back alley, that happened to give on a restaurant that was on St. Catharines Street, which is the main street of Montreal. And that was quite an evening.
So Roger, you're at this restaurant. What happened?
Well, after we were seated, in entering there, the place was just full, packed tight. But there was a couple of tables against a wall that had a reservation sign on it. And the owner of the place recognized the band leader and came and said, good evening, and you gentlemen want a table. So you're one of the reserved people. So we sat there, and we had our favorite alcoholic beverages, you know. And as we talked, the band leader says, how long have you fellas been involved with sorcery? And he shocked us a little bit, and I said, exactly what do you mean? Well, he said, you know, what you people are doing, talking to the supposed spirits of the dead. He says, this is silly.
And this man had been at the seance with you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's telling you that it's silly what you've just done.
Because see, my wife, he says, goes to these seances because she gets comfort and she gets something good out of it, good feeling out of it. And she lives for what the spirits are going to see that the future is going to be like. To me, he says, I can't bother with this stuff. He says, I want power. I go right to the source of power. And he says, how do you think that I became famous the way that I am? Well, I said, you must have had some good luck. Well, he says, there's no such thing as good luck. He says, there's either some power working for you somewhere, or you don't get ahead in this world. Not in my type of occupation. So it went from there. We got talking about spirit worship.
Did it intrigue you? Or did it make you want to find out more about what exactly he was talking about?
Yeah. So he said the supposed spirits of the dead that you're talking with are demon spirits. They're fallen angels. They're beautiful beings.
Just set it out, just like that.
Oh yeah.
It didn't make you uneasy when he said they were
Well,
just
it shocked you a little bit, something that you first hear mentioned to you. He said, you guys have got a great future ahead of you. Because we've been told, the high priest of our society, secret society, has been told that the master has very special plans for you too.
Now, what did he mean by the master?
Satan. And we were interested to hear more about it. And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing, he says, among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood. And God did not bear with him like he does with people that make mistakes today. So we're in a warfare, good against evil. And we happen to be the evil ones, but we're not that bad. He says, I look at this business between the forces of good and evil. He says, you believe in one person believes in God, and everyone believes in Lucifer. It's like politics.
So the great controversy is real. And you've heard someone talk about it that's on the other side.
And to these people, they are sold to the fact that Christ will not return to this planet with power and great glory. He's going to abdicate all claims to the planet, because the high priest once said that Christ will abdicate all claim to the planet because he knows that it is lawfully and rightfully Satan's. And at that time, he says, Lucifer, he mentioned Lucifer a lot of times, but he mentioned Satan also. He says, the master, usually they like to talk about the master will resurrect his people from the graves.
Now, George is telling you all this, or the high priest?
George.
Okay, when the evening wound down, and you're putting a cap on all that, you guys had consumed some alcohol.
Yeah.
And did you feel like that there was kind of a one-shot deal? You didn't know if it ever happened again? What happened after that?
He said, no, I said, listen, guys. He said, I like to have you, says, meet some of our people. What about next week, Wednesday evening? I'll pick you up at your place, and you're invited to one of our services.
Services? Like a church service?
Yeah, something similar like that. It's a testimonial to the spirits, about how the spirits have blessed your life. See? So, when we left there, I said to myself, this guy's half drunk. I'm not going to hear from him again, But it was true. Wednesday night came, he was there with his big Lincoln, step in, and we went to one of the most beautiful area of Montreal. And the place was a mansion. Now, a mansion is usually very large. We call this a small mansion. It was beautiful. Most beautiful place. Yeah.
Roger, your friend George took you and Roland to this mansion where people worshipped the demons.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like there? What kind of people were there?
Well, it was a big surprise for me, as I kind of made up in my mind an idea that they were going to be rough-looking characters. But as we entered the place, I was amazed to see that they were all very well dressed, well mannered, and that a lot of the people, as we were being introduced to people, were professionals, doctors, attorneys, a lot of business people. And see what they had? They had a praise session to the gods, which is the spirit counselors, which are in charge of legions of spirits, of demon spirits. And they talk about what the Lord of their lives has done for them, because they call on particular spirits, like the god Nehushtan, which you read in 2 King about. The Israelites worshipped the golden serpent that Moses had made. Mm-hmm. Well, behind the spirit worship, behind that, they were worshipping the serpent. They were actually worshipping this spirit Nehushtan. And the same spirit Nehushtan is, the priest was telling us, that the medical doctor that was telling us how he was making operations that had never been made before, because people had to be awake, have no feeling. He was able to, carry on the surgeries that had not been done before. Mm-hmm. But the spirits would give that capacity to be able to operate without people feeling any pain and things. And also without no problem with the blood, because as he would cut his incision, because incisions, everything open and with no blood running. Mm-hmm. So he could do the work that has not been done before. So.
Now, I recall reading in your book that at this praise worship service they would sing hymns. Why would they sing hymns in a demon worship?
Yeah, this was kind of a big surprise to me when that took place. The priest said, "Hey, let's go down to the worship room of the gods and have a praise session, a singing session." So we go down there, and what did they think? You think they pass around? Church hymnals, Christian church hymnals. And I couldn't believe this. I said, "What's his business?" So the priest says, "Well, now," he says, "for those of you that are new, let me tell you that this is the most feasible way," he says, "to please the spirits. It's to deride Christ and his people, and his church and all that." So they sing out of Christian hymnals.
They didn't sing Christian words to the hymns, however.
Well, they changed a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and not for the good.
It's a form of blasphemy. Yeah. Mm. Such as you see today in the rock music world. You see the entertainers; they have these crosses. Mm-hmm. Ladies got earrings, crosses. Mm-hmm. The guys got the cross. This is a form of blasphemy, a form of deriding Christ. You see, mm-hmm. Spirits cause the people to do that, to find pleasure in wearing this type of emblem, which is the cross is the emblem of the crucifixion of Christ to the Christians.
Mm-hmm. So what were your impressions the first time you went down into that worship room?
Well, it was, we'd been there maybe a half a dozen times, and the high priest told us after the meeting was over, he wanted to talk to us, my friend and I. So after most people had left, he says, "The master of my life has revealed to me that it is time for you people to become acquainted with the worship room of the gods." Well, we started to move toward a beautiful grand staircase. Beautiful. The banister was huge. It was massive, and the wrought iron work that they had done in it was super. The beautiful decorations on the walls, the chandelier on the first landing. See, that was the first landing. You go down about 8 or 10 steps, and you had the first landing. It was huge and beautiful. The light arrangement was the nicest I had ever seen in my life. When we got into this sanctuary area, it wasn't very brightly lit, but everything was magnified. The beauty of certain things, like a lot of the things were gold plated, are gold trims. You see, the little altars where they had the spirits that had materialized. They photographed them, and then they had paintings made of them. And there was probably about maybe 100 of those around the place.
Sort of like a shrine.
Yeah, and underneath there was a little altar where you have incense and things that they would use in their prayer sessions and things like that, devotions to certain spirits. And some of the objects in there, the priest said, were solid gold. It was a unique experience to see that.
So how did you feel when you walked into that room?
I felt that these people had power, and they had a lot of it.
Did that attract you?
Yes and no.
You had mixed feelings about it?
I had mixed feelings about it, yeah. Because to a certain extent, things looked so good and sounded so good to us. But you see, I'd been brought up in a Christian home where my parents had told us we were 8 children in the family, and especially the older ones, you know. My dad says, well, you know, if you get involved in wrongdoing, you're going to have to pay the price. There's always a cost for everything in this world. So this thought kept creeping into my mind. Just how far you go with these spirits before we start paying the price. See?
So it made you just a little bit nervous.
Oh, yes.
But yet you kept going back.
Oh, there was no way out. Because that we were told.
You knew at that time.
Yeah.
So you were moving forward more on fear.
More on fear, yes. Because the high priest said that the master had special plans for us in our lives. And that no one ever went into this society unless they were invited by the spirits. See, so that was made very clear. And he also expressed to us the danger, explained to us the danger of going against the will of the spirits. And he mentioned about this one man and his wife that live in a fireproof building in Montreal. The place burned right down with him in it. He was one of their members that had decided that, well, he wanted to think things over. He was not going to get initiated at a time that the spirit said he would like him to be initiated into the society.
So in reality, Roger, you were chosen by high-powered demon spirits to be a part of their human, special, privileged group.
You see, these people in Montreal, the society, like the priest mentioned, there's thousands of spirit worshippers in only different societies of spirit worshippers in this world. But he says, we are the elite. We know the real truth about the master and his angels. And they're not hideous-looking beings. They are gorgeous creatures. And from the paintings that they had on the wall of the walls of that worship room, they were unique beings. Especially there was a painting full size, full-length painting of the fallen Lucifer above his altar, and that was very fascinating because he looked like a man of great intellect, high forehead, the way that he looked with his eyes, the way he had the eyes looking. It gave you a depth of perception of somebody that is very, very knowledgeable and
powerful.
Powerful, yeah.
So Roger, this high priest that you talked about, he is the one that ushered you down into the worship room. Was he also the one that led out in the praise sessions that you talked about?
Yes, and he had an assistant also, another priest.
Okay. Now, when you would go to these praise sessions, what kinds of things happened at those sessions?
Well, there's a lot of success stories.
Positive mental attitude kinds of things?
Well, yes, a lot of success stories. The masters has done this for me and that for me. I remember one lumber dealer, he had like half a dozen different operations in province of Quebec, and everything that he touched seemed to turn to money. You know? And he was telling about it. And then there's this other person that was a clairvoyant that would work only for the wealthy people, only for the super wealthy. He says, I have the know-how, They have the means, let them pay. So he advised in business transactions. They would come to him and say, listen, I look at this deal that I might get, this factory or whatever it is, because this person was interested in industrial real estate, see. And he would talk to the spirit, and then the spirit was audible to him. See, you could hear the spirit talk to him, but the man did not hear. So the spirit was telling the clairvoyant what, he called himself an astrologer, reading the moons and the stars and,
Now, what was the term you used for his title, this man?
Clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant.
Oh, clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant. Okay. Yes, and it was interesting. This person stood up and says, I had a nice little experience last week. And he says, the masters, he says, they take care of you. This lady and her husband brought him, to this astrologer, a bundle of money. They said, this is the deal that you... And he works at only on percentages. Only on percentages. He doesn't work for set amounts of money. Only percentages of what the people are going to make. So he said, they brought me a substantial amount of money. And they were very happy with it, and I thought it was very reasonable. But then my guide, spirit, says, ask them when they're going to give you the other $1,700 that is really yours. And he says to the folks, I would like to know now, before we leave here, when will you have the $1,700 to give me? That makes up my part of, rightful part of the deal. The wife fainted, and the husband says, we'll have the money for you within 24 hours. So that was this type of priest.
So he was thanking the demons for helping him to know that.
Oh yeah, even spirits, yeah.
At what point did this demon worship start to affect you personally, Roger?
Well, it wasn't too long that the priest mentioned to us that the time had arrived for us to start trusting the spirits and give the spirits a chance to work for us. And there was a number of gifts that you could choose from, you see. And I used to play the horses, some. Not knowledgeable at all. I used to go to those bookies, play the horses so often. But I said, hey, I would like to be able to, for the spirit to instruct me on the numbers and the name of the horses that's going to win, at Belmont or some other racetracks like that. Make myself a little money. So the priest says, it'll be given you. And sure enough, one night whether I fell into a trance or dreamed the thing, I don't know exactly what happened, but I saw 3 races that were really going to pay big. And these horses were dummies, so to speak. You know what I mean? They were not really good horses. They were like one horse paid 21 to 1 because he was that poor, right? The chance of winning was so poor that they paid 21 to 1 on him. And it showed me that I saw the board at the bouquet and the number on it. And I went there, and they said it was going to be on Saturday. That was like on Wednesday. A few days later, it was Saturday. I went there, and sure enough, there they were on the boards. I went to the wicket and handed some money and got myself a winner. Now I said, well, I'm a little crazy. I ought to put more money on there, so I put $20 onto the next horse, and that paid 21 to 1. So I left there with maybe $400 or $500 in my hands, and I started to do that. In this case, I went directly down to the finest men's shop on St. Catherine Street and bought myself a $200 suit.
And in 1946, a $200 suit was...
in 1946, people used to work at the RCA Victor, where I had worked before I went to the Navy, for $18 a week. Mm-hmm. And the good earners were $75 to $50 to $75 per week, for labor.
So the demon spirits looked on you so favorably, they began to help you win in your gambling.
Then I went to other bookies, you see. And one day, I am told of the man at the cage, where you do your bet, he says, my boss would like to talk to you. And he said, you go right through that door over there. Oh, sure. So I know the guy says, come on in. The guy's sitting behind the big desk, smoking the big cigar. So he says, you're Roger. I says, yeah. He got up and walked around me. He said, you don't look that smart. I said, what, sir? You don't look that smart. He says that you could pick horses that are winners when they're supposed to be losers. Where do you get your help? What do you mean help? I'm not getting any help. I just happen to go and... Oh, no. We've been watching you here, he says, for a number of weeks. And you always leave here with some of our good money. And I'll tell you, buddy, if you want a list of all the bookies in Montreal, I'll give you a list of them. But he says, I want you out of here. And don't show up again. Because somebody's going to put a... You know what I mean? I said, okay, sir, I won't be back again. So it's a tough business to be in gambling.
So even with the Spirit's help, it was tough.
Yeah. Well, it's stuff he's going to shoot you, yes.
Yeah. The high priest would say a number of things to you when you were in these praise services, and you went to a number of them over a period of time. Mm-hmm. Talked about the issues of the great conflict. You've already touched on that a little bit. I want you to follow up on that a little bit more, Roger. Some of the things that you wrote in your book, Trip into the Supernatural, sounds a whole lot like what we as Christians today know as the Great Controversy. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that he told you there?
Well, he says that there is a great controversy going on between the force of good and evil, between Christ and Satan. And they always praise the great master, Satan, as a super intelligent being that he is, beautiful to behold, and if he ever appears to you, you won't be able to look upon him because it'll be too bright. It'll just ruin your vision. The high priest said he was in Chicago, and the Spirit appeared to him and said, Morneau and his buddy, George, has invited them to the service, and the fellow that is in charge while you're away says that he's going to wreck all the work that the spirits have done for the last few years to get these people into the society. So the high priest, which is in Chicago, picks up the phone and calls, and the Spirit appeared to him, and he said the angel was so bright that he could not look upon him. And he says after he picked up the phone to dial, he couldn't dial the phone because of the fact that his vision was so terribly blurred by the light, the beautiful light of the bright being. And he asked, dial 0, and the operator came on, and she had to, dial for him. And they talk about many, many things in regards to, who's going to win this conflict.
Any discussion about fire and brimstone?
Yes. He says, the Bible people, talking about the Christians, they read in the Bible that, we're all going to land in a lake of fire and this and that. So that's baloney. He says the conflict is going to end peacefully. Christ is going to realize that he might as well abdicate the rights of this planet, take his few people on with him to his planet in the center of the galaxies, and we will be left with a master who will resurrect all his people that will be as numerous as the sand of the sea. See? And the master will rule forever and ever and ever. A happy people. And he named some of the people that's going to be there. I don't want to mention the names because they're known to history. Yeah. So that was quite impressive.
Did you always feel, Roger, that these people were telling the truth?
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, they really had things down straight. But I was not satisfied with the answers. And there was something, and I understand now, it was the Spirit of God saying, hold back, fellow. Hold back. And the priest had talked about us thinking seriously about being initiated into the their cult.
Right. So they let you come to sort of take a look, see, but you can't go back for several months.
Oh yeah, it's not a matter of whether you're going to be initiated or not. It's when.
Okay.
You see?
So they begin to press you for a commitment.
So the priest said, look, fellas, I'm not going to pressure you into anything, okay? But I want to show you what the spirits can do for a devoted servant. We went downstairs, not through the staircase that I talked for the worship room of the gods, but at the other end of the building. Went downstairs, and a number of times I'd gone there to the men's room, and I heard these typewriters clicking like the dickens. Man is going. I said, why do we have a lot of people typing in there, in that room? Well, we went there that evening, and he knocked, and the man says, come on in. And there was all those typewriters moving along by themselves, typing at the speed that I'd never seen before. And not only that, the high priest says, I want to show you something clever. So he says, follow me. So we went around the table. There was like 2 long tables, and they had about 10 typewriters. And he says, now notice that the typewriter types to the right, then doesn't go back. It types back to the left. Isn't that something? I had never heard of things like that before. He said the spirits are doing the work. And he introduced us to the man. And the man is a lawyer. And he said, how much money did you make last year? Oh, he says, it's in the 6 figures. You see?
So this lawyer had a business in the building that housed the worship room.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a whole room full of typewriters.
Yeah.
And he put paper in there, and demons
That's
typed.
all he did. Put typewriter paper in there. It was
And what came out? What was it that came out?
different briefs for court cases.
And so he would sell these to people?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
he had this service to the legal profession,
And the high priest was
the
showing...
United States and Canada.
So the high priest was showing you this to give you an idea about the kinds of blessings that you would
That's
receive?
right. Yeah.
But after you left that typewriter, the room where the lawyer was, they tried to draw you into a commitment by getting you to make a public profession. Tell us about that.
Well, they have a super beautiful resort in the Laurentian Mountains, which is north of Montreal, north of Saint Agathe. Saint Agathe is a famous name there in Montreal. Montrealers, because they all go Saint Agathe or north there, you know, the summer home and that. So they had a big resort up there. It was people, you know, it was a closed society. And they had on October the 30th, Halloween, is that?
October 31.
31, last day of October. They had what they call live animal sacrifices. I don't know what it is. They did. We could never find out. By the time that the Lord pulled me out of there, I had not yet found out what it was. So you have this intrigue involved in there. And he talked about three very unique services that I attended there that sit on my mind forever. One was entitled Christian Idolatry. Another one was entitled The Super Deception of a Glorious New Age, which actually applies to the New Age today. And this was 1946 that we're talking. And then the other one was Satan's Great General Council of the 1700s. And I must say the things that I heard there was an eye-opener. First of all, we'll go through the Great General Council.
Okay.
At the beginning of the 1700s, said the high priest, Satan and all his spirit counselors held a Great General Council with one purpose in mind. It was to prepare for the great industrial age that was soon to break upon the world. And Lucifer also foresaw another age that was to follow that, where tremendous scientific discoveries would be made by people, and we would enter a unique age that would change the way that everybody lives. It would also serve to usher in the end times and the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. And the priest said that Lucifer had been studying the Bible. And he found in Daniel 12:4, where we are told about the time of the end, when he shall run to and fro, knowledge shall be increased. He understood it to be that we're getting to that point. And he had, with all the spirit counselors, to change their modes of operation in order, to ensnare people. And to devise a way whereby people would disqualify themselves from being members of Christ's kingdom.
And he was just very candid about this.
Oh, yeah.
Telling you and the rest of the group, 60 or 70 people there, the plans that
Close to 100 people.
Lucifer had revealed to him.
And by the time the council came to a close, they had 3 major policies that were going to be followed. First, they were to see to it that humans would be made to believe that Satan and his angels do not really exist. Because see, up to that time, you could walk down a street of Paris and you would have signs that would say where you have a soothsayer or a fortune teller of some type, and if you want to put a curse on someone, you could go and see this other old lady over there, the old witch. That's the way it goes. But now it had to change. Lucifer says we have to make sure that people, humans, get to believe that Satan and his angels do not really exist.
Roger, that's interesting because a recent research study report that I read indicated that in a national survey, I believe it's over 75% of people do not really believe in a real tangible devil. But there is one.
Oh, yeah. Now, the next thing, the 3 parts policy that they had adopted there, the second one was to find a way of being able to get total control of people's minds. And that would be done by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introduce it as a new science for the benefit of mankind.
So part of what the high priest told you was Satan's strategy to take total control of people's minds.
They felt that by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introducing it as a new science for the benefit of mankind, they could then use people of great renown, educators, people of capacity, that would do great things, such as supposedly regress people in time to former lives that they had. And of course, after the session is over, the person would not know a thing about ancient history. And the person that she or he has talked about performing, certain deeds, we'll say 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. But this was their strategy. Now, what this would do for the thing is this, that it would create in the minds of the general public, solidly set in the mind of the general public, an unwavering trust in that great deception. In other words, people could, they would believe it. This person was hypnotized, was regressing time to, former lives, and did this and did that, and no deception. Maybe Alexander the Great, we'll say, and some of his generals and people like that. And the person, after the session is over, comes out of hypnotism, and he or she doesn't know what she's talking about. So now this would be a way of de-Christianizing the Western world through the avenue of mysticism. Now the time came when Lucifer decided that he had to choose a person to initiate this thing. And Franz Mesmer, which was an Austrian physician, was chosen. Because
the priest told you all of this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because he was most capable. Mesmer originated a theory called animal magnetism, later on named mesmerism. Mesmer was led by the spirits to believe, and this is what the priest said, was led by the spirits to believe that certain persons have a magnetic influence within themselves, so to speak, that would cause them to have great power over other persons, even to the point of placing them into a trance. And at that time, that was readily accepted by people in general, at the time that Mesmer lived. So people realized, you know, they said that some people get a capacity to put you into a trance. That's the way. Now, by the time that he died, in 1815, a lot of the physicians in Europe were using hypnotism as a means of anesthesia.
Now, hypnotism is the same as mesmerism?
That's right.
Okay.
So mesmerism that's been developed to a higher degree of refinement. And the priest went on saying that the plan of Satan to deceive the human family this way, he says, is the most intriguing thing to his mind. And he went on saying how it was going to be brought about. He said that a fellow by the name of Darwin and another fellow by the name of Thomas Henry Huxley would be used by the spirits because in their childhood they had been hypnotized by medical doctors. And they figured that they would be real good subjects to lead the people into this belief that they had, that Satan wanted to bring into people's lives.
Now, what were those 3 points again, Roger? The 3 things were, number 1, that they did not want Satan did not want the human family to think that he or his angels existed.
Right.
The second point that you made had to do with taking control of people's minds.
That's right.
The third point was what?
Was to destroy the Bible without burning it.
Okay.
See?
And what was his strategy on that?
On that, it was very interesting. Because after the Great General Council, it was decided that Satan would tutor Charles Darwin personally in setting up the principles of his theories of evolution. He was tutored by Lucifer himself, the fallen Lucifer. And at that time, it was understood, Satan and his spirit counselors understood that if a person was led to believe in the theory of evolution, it would, in his life, destroy completely the creation week of the Bible, the fall of man, and the plan of redemption. It would do away with it.
In one fell swoop.
Yeah. Now, he made a unique statement. He said that according to the spirits, anyone that teaches a theory of evolution is considered to be a minister of the great religious system. See, they call it the religious system, the theory of evolution, because it is a system of schooling people and getting them to disqualify themselves and being members of Christ's kingdom. And he said that every teacher of that theory is recognized by the spirits as a person of great value and receives a very special unction from Satan himself, giving great power to induce spiritual blindness, to convince and convert. 3 capacities are given to those teachers of the theory. Then, that's not all. The priest says that Satan considers the teachers of the theory of evolution to be so valuable to him that in the sight of all the inhabitants of the galaxies, he assigns a retinue of bright, beautiful angels to follow that educator all the remainder of his life. And that in the sight of the inhabitants of the galaxies is the greatest honor that he can bestow upon his workers, upon mankind, and to, until the controversy is finished. That was quite enlightening.
Now, the high priest was talking just sort of like a preacher would talk up front. Was he enthusiastic? Did he seem like he had bought into this and was excited about it?
Oh yeah, he believed it 100%, no question about it, everything.
Why would he be so excited about spirits trying to deceive human beings? Because obviously out of this council of the 1700s, deception was a major part of the strategy. Why?
Well, he says it's deception It's like politics. You know, you believe in one candidate, the other person believes in the other candidate, and they're fighting to get the position, and it's just a matter of who's going to be the smartest. And with Lucifer, the fallen cherubim, he's very smart. He's going to win, and Christ's going to abdicate the rights of the planet. He's going to resurrect his people, have established his kingdom that lasts for ever and ever. God won't be able to destroy him because it would be against God's, the Creator's nature to destroy Lucifer in the fire. Beside that, he said, spirits now, even spirits, have the capacity now to outlive fire. He says, you don't believe it, go to India or some of those countries where they have firewalkers. And it's done by the power of demon spirits. These people are energized by demon spirits, so they can walk on those hot coals without burning themselves.
And this is what the high priest said.
And he says, if they want to use fire, they can use it. It's not going to burn anybody. So that's the way they believe.
This high priest was almost talking to your group in an evangelistic fervor.
Oh yeah, because he figures that he's going to be one of the higher ups in the great kingdom.
Okay. Now, of the group that was there that night, 60, 70 people, I think you've mentioned before.
Yeah, it varied.
How many of those were people who were hardcore members, and how many of them were new inductees?
Well, we were the only two youngsters there, so to speak.
You and your friend. And how old were you at that time, Roger?
I was about 20.
20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20 years old.
Did you have a feeling of awe over the fact that you had been chosen?
Yes, in a way. And then I got thinking about this. When am I going to have to pay the price? The cost. My parents had brought me up like this. If you get involved with evil, you're going to reap what you sowed. So you want to be upright in life. And if you associate with evildoers, they'll probably land you in jail or somewhere else that you wouldn't want to be. So there's always a price to be paid.
So you had that little something maybe instilled by your mother and father a long time ago that kept you from making that full commitment.
Now, one of the things that really amazed me and shocked me and made me sick at heart, it's when the priests talk about Christian idolatry.
What is Christian idolatry? The priest mentioned that word.
Yeah.
Tell us what he said, Roger.
He said that Christian idolatry is the most grandiose or great deception that has ever been brought upon the human family, upon mankind. And he says, and he boasted that demon spirits are continually defiling Christian churches through the avenue of necromancy by using a form of spirit worship that involves hundreds of millions of Christians into idolatry without their being aware of it.
Now, what is necromancy? Define necromancy for me.
Their belief, popular belief of necromancy, is to conjure the spirits of the dead.
So that you can speak with someone who has died.
Right.
Like the seance that you originally went to was the practice of necromancy.
Yeah. Now, the priest says that the super deception is brought about in only one way. Through the deceptive belief that man has an immortal soul that lives on after death. And he said that constitutes idolatry through necromancy. So he says there are hundreds of millions of Christians that are practicing idolatry while they think they're glorifying God. See?
Because they believe that the soul is immortal.
Yeah.
They may not be talking to the supposed spirits of the dead.
Oh, yeah. Contrary to popular belief, necromancy does not consist of conjuring the spirits of the dead. The reason being that man is totally mortal and does not possess an immortal soul. So who are they talking to? He says the friendly demon spirits that have always found over the centuries great delight in impersonating in apparitions departed loved ones and persons of great renown.
Now, friendly demon spirits.
Friendly demon spirits.
Are there more than one kind of demon
Oh, yeah.
spirits, Roger?
Well, there's three main divisions, and then there's divisions within those divisions. You have the friendly demon spirits that seem to have the finesse and the refinement, and they're not upset about what happened when they were thrown out of heaven from what I gather. Then you have the warriors. They like to bring misery and destruction in the lives of people. Then you have the oppressors. And the oppressors are the real wicked spirits that hate God with all of their, the Creator with all of their might. You know. So he went on explaining. He says, now, necromancy is in reality a belief, a religious belief. People believe that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence than they had when they were alive. Also that they are in a position and have the capacity to help the living here on earth. See? Then he said, he says, this is where things get really interesting. He said, according to the great master, a person does not have to supposedly call upon the spirits of the dead to receive help, you see, to be involved in necromancy. All he needs to do is to believe in life after death. Because he said, necromancy is the belief that man is as a human being, as an immortal soul. So anybody that believes that man has an immortal soul is involved in necromancy. It's that simple. That's the way he explained it. Yeah.
So how does that constitute idolatry?
By people believing that they are either talking to the saints, you see, the spirits of the dead saints, or a dead relative, or a dead person of some type. And you take, for instance, like Loretta Lynn. She says on national television, and I have the data on it, that I heard it myself. She said that she was made successful in her singing career by a dear friend of hers that was the same age as she, and died when she was 18 years of age. And Loretta was trying to get into the singing world, you know, but she says, I had no success at all. Until one night I was sitting in bed reading a book. And she says, who walks right through the wall but my friend, the spirit of my friend? And she says, Loretta, I'm going to make you a very famous person in singing Western country music, and I will be with you all the time. Trust me. And she says she had a big concert once, and she was coming down with this bad cold. And she thought that her voice was going to give. She talked to her spirit and felt that she was going to be helped. And she got on the stage and she started to sing, and right in the middle of where she really needed the power, no power at all. And her spirit friend tapped her on the shoulder and started to sing for her. She said, her voice went through me, the power. See?
And you saw this in a television documentary?
Yeah. This was, I believe, in 1976 it took place. Now, the priest explained that when people believe in this business, they are actually opening themselves to be completely deceived by demon spirits, because it gives the demon spirits an opportunity to impersonate the dead, see, and for people to believe their lies. And the priest says that thrills first of all, he says it brings the great master the respect and the reverence that is due to his great name. And it makes all the other spirits exceedingly happy, because they are the ones that have worked to lead people to believe in life after death. See? And they rejoice also. And that's the extent of what
Christian idolatry is all about. Friendly spirits, just to digress for just a moment. You mentioned 3 different categories, and the friendly spirits are the ones that love to impersonate a being, a historian or something.
We specialize in that.
In your experiences in the praise services or in the worship room or the other places where you were, any of the places you were, did you ever witness an event where necromancy, or even something that would be popularly called channeling today, took place, where you actually heard the voice of someone in response to someone's questions?
Yeah, a number of times, but there was one time in particular that fascinated me, because it was unique in one way. The priest told us that there was a French historian that was affiliated with Montreal, University of Montreal, which is a French university and the English university is McGill. So the University of Montreal is the French university. And this man was from Paris, but he's affiliated with the university. And he wanted to have some details in regards to Napoleon Bonaparte and one of his generals. So, by the way, there are also in other parts of the world elite spirit worshippers like the group that we had in Montreal. And he mentioned there that, he said, you guys are fortunate when my friend and I went in, because you're right in time to see something very interesting. My friend there is having his devotions in the worship room of the gods, and he will use a trance medium to converse with certain demon spirits that will inform him in regards to ancient history about Napoleon. And sure enough, we went down there, and somebody came up and said he's ready for the session, and we went down there, and he said he would need 3 people. You would need 3 people, but he wanted 5 people that volunteer to be the channel for the spirit. Okay, so three of them were chosen there, and the others went back and sat down. And the man shook his head a little bit like this. His eyes went glazed, and he stayed at it for a half hour. And the spirit spoke to him. He said, I'm a spirit counselor, and what would you like to know? He had a clipboard, the historian, in asking some questions.
This historian was from Paris.
Yeah.
And he was wanting information,
some detailed information
about Napoleon
Bonaparte and one of his generals.
And so he asked the questions of one of these human beings that was channeling.
Oh yeah, the voice changed and everything. The voice changed of the person completely.
Okay.
And
it identified itself as a spirit guide.
Oh yeah, spirit counselor, yeah.
Okay, a spirit counselor. And then proceeded to tell him all the events that he was asking,
yes.
answer his questions?
And there was a certain question that was asked, and the spirit counselor said, I will have Lord Remy and Lord Alphonse duplicate, in other words, the dialogue that had taken place.
Oh,
and
the two other drama.
Yeah,
a little
and the 2 other men fulfilled what he was looking for. But the one thing that interests me is the mayor of Montreal, Camillien Hood. During World War II, at the beginning of the war, he was very controversial when in regards to the war effort. He would tell the French-speaking boys not to go into the armed service, you see, because you're going to go and shed your blood for the British, and we're their servants, so to speak, and all that, and he didn't want them to go into war, and they put him in prison. He was jailed for the length of the war for this. Now, the man said, I would like to have you tell me, to the spirit, to give me part of the speech that was given by Camillien Hood on the steps of the Montreal City Hall on a certain date. There are different versions of what has taken place, and you, Lord, would know the exact one.
Now, the mayor of Montreal was still alive.
Was still alive.
And this historian is asking what was actually said at a speech.
Yeah.
Okay.
The spirit counselor said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. All of my activities and my people have taken place in Europe. However, after my departure, our departure, other spirits will come and help you. And sure enough, the guy vibrated a little bit, and he's back, and he said, boy, how long? He said, 20 minutes you've been used as a channel. So they, again, the spirit entered into him, and the spirit said he was a spirit counselor that could give him the information that he was looking for. So, again, it was given verbally, and it was the voice of Camillien Hood.
Now, how did you know that it was the voice?
Well, because of the fact, you see, I was a youngster in those days, just about ready to go into the army. And Camillien, we used to listen to the radio We had no television in those days, so it was only radio and read newspaper. And all the speeches of Cavalier made and all of it was on the radio all the time. And in those days, they had no tape recorders, as we have now. So Cavalier would have to go to the Canadian Broadcasting Studio, where they made a record, a real phonograph record. And then they played it over and over, for the rest of the day.
So you listened to those as a teenager before you went into the Army, so you knew his voice.
So I knew his voice really good. So I said to George, he was sitting next to me, he said, "Isn't it amazing?" He said, "If you think that's amazing, wait," he says, "until the spirits impersonate one of the departed people that you know, personally, like an uncle or a brother or a sister or something like that." He says, "That is unique." But that's the way it was. You are able to reproduce a voice, man, and the just to perfection. The spirits are exceedingly proud of this, because, and this also was right up my alley. The priest said that as the times on this planet gets more and more difficult, and calamities of all kinds are striking the planet more and more frequently, demon spirits are going to impress people with the importance of Sunday sacredness.
Roger, when I was a teenager back in the 1970s, I remember a song that came out talking about the age of Aquarius. And since then, we've seen the development of the New Age, and I wondered if back when you were involved in spirit worship, if they talked about New Age at all.
Oh yes, it was a big thing that was coming up. One of the major deceptions of the last days. And the priest told us, we talked for quite a while, and then he said, "Could I have a little bit more of your time? I want to tell you something very fascinating." He says, "The grand plan, the master's grand plan for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil." So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of the spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grand plan is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because he says demon spirits will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet, unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it. And he went on saying that they will claim to have out-of-body experiences. Are you familiar with out-of-body experiences?
I've read about them.
In other words, so there's some persons are supposed to be able to, they believe in their immortal soul.
Astral projection.
Yes, right. Goes into different parts of the world and sees things and come back, and then they write all about it.
I've heard of that.
So, due to the fact that the millions of the earth people believe in people having an immortal soul, it has to be readily accepted when the spirits will, through a trance medium, converse with influential people of the land. You see.
Now, what is a trance medium?
It's a channeler today.
What is known today as a channeler?
Channeler, yeah. Okay. Shirley MacLaine's experience of getting involved with spiritism and with the supposed inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies, I taped the whole thing. It's 3 hours.
And you were hearing the fulfillment of what this high priest had said 45 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So he went on explaining about the fact that the spirits will show themselves willing to give valuable guidance that will not only help people avoid the destruction of the planet, but it would cause it to enter into a higher state of existence. For instance, he said the spirits will promise, and this is a big word, promise, that if their recommendations are followed carefully, they will usher in a glorious new age of peace and prosperity, and there'll be there'll be no more wars. You see, There'll be no more famines. There'll be no more people getting unhappy with one another. Neighbors will love neighbor, and social unrest will not take place no more. There'll be perfect happiness for 1,000 years. That's what the Spirit is going to promise. And
Almost like the Garden of Eden created all over again.
And now we find that a lot of preachers are preaching the great age of glorious new age of victory over wars, victory over social unrest, victory over famines, and victory over all kinds of.
And he used the words New Age to describe what was coming.
It would be a glorious new age, yeah. And this is exactly what the movement is all about today. And he went on and said, as I said a little earlier, that as life on this planet becomes more and more difficult, and calamities will strike the planet more and more frequently, the spirits at that time are going to put all their effort to impress religious leaders, to bring before the masses of the earth the sacredness of Sunday. See? They will teach Sunday sacredness. And with the religious leaders, looking forward to 1,000 years of perfect peace on earth, they will put all their effort into it. Then laws will be passed by governments. One person asked, what's going to happen about people that don't believe in the Spirit's recommendation? The priest says, that's be no problem at all. Laws will be passed by governments that will force people to go along with it, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. And he says the law enforcement officers will explain to people, make it clear that such a law is necessary to assure the well-being of all people. He says the laws will be passed with no effort at all. And then he went on and he said about the fact that the venerability of the sun, which in ages past was such an irritant to the Creator. All these great nations and other nations, of smaller ones, were all involved in sun worship. And in those centuries, the Creator found that teaching of worship of the sun to be a terrible irritant. And he said, it is going again to take place, but not in worshiping the sun, in remembering Sunday to keep it holy. He made a statement I would never forget. He says, by the observance of the day upon which the master, Satan, has placed the unction of his authority and power, he receives homage, regardless of whom people claim to worship. Isn't that something? So, can you understand now why I had 28 Bible studies in 1 week and started to go to church on Sabbath? And I never missed since until I became sick.
The issue of a day of worship came up in that meeting. Was Sunday the only day mentioned?
Well, you see, the priest mentioned, yes, about the fact Satan has chosen Sunday as his day. The Creator has chosen the 7th day of the week. Lucifer has chosen to call his day the first day of the week, Sunday. See? And regardless of what people claim to worship, worshiping God, the Creator, by observing that day, that particular day, they are bringing homage and respect.
Now, at that time in your life, you were 20 years old or so. Had you ever heard of a Seventh-day Adventist?
Never in my life.
In that meeting...
They didn't talk about Seventh-day Adventist. They talked strictly about Adventist.
Well, they just talked... But they did... The word Adventist was mentioned.
The priest was telling us that necromancy, as I mentioned earlier, is the belief that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence, etc. And he says, for centuries, friendly demon spirits have worked diligently to establish and uphold in the religious convictions of all people the belief that man has an immortal soul. See? Then he boasted about the fact that the master was so smart in that he had deceived the whole world, even in this age of great scientific knowledge and understanding, Then one person put his hand up. And the priest says, yeah, yes, you want to say something? He says, what about the Adventists? You can't count them to see regarding the state of the dead. And I got a question. What about, how come that they can't be brought under the great deception? The priest said, you're right. I apologize, says here, I made a mistake. When I said that all the millions of people living on the face of this planet, everybody, you know, was honoring the great master. I forgot the Adventists. They're so few in number when you figure the billions and all people, I didn't even think of mentioning him. So I'm sorry. Then he says, secondly, the reason why they can't be brought under the great deception, let me explain about it. Now he said, my next statement is going to upset some of you. But what I'm telling you is the honest truth. It is factual, it's reality. The fact that the Adventists observe the biblical Sabbath of creation and reverence the Creator on that day, it makes it impossible for the spirits to deceive them. They are given very special help and great spiritual insight. And he said, under these conditions, they are not ordinary people. And that stayed with me, man, just like this. And when I heard the word Adventist, when Cyril told me later on, which we're going to cover later, I asked him, I said, what denomination do you belong to? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. What's that again? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. I said, is that the same thing as Adventist? Oh yeah, he says, a lot of people call us the Adventists. They don't talk about the 70s, same thing. Boy, I was interested.
I bet you were. Now,
I wanted to know what his Bible said.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Things,
because that was the one group that under question only, the high priest of the demonic worship house. Yeah. The thing that he had said to you was, this is the one group that can't be deceived.
That's right.
And so somewhere back inside that that resistance you had came out, and you awoke.
A few months later, that experience, unique experience, was instrumental in helping me make a decision for Christ. And also, I had no hesitation to join myself to God's commandment-keeping people because of the fact that I knew what kind of people they were. And after having had 28 Bible studies in 1 week, I started to keep the Sabbath, forever. But you see, the time that I had these Bible studies, 4 hours per evening, we started at 7 o'clock and finished at 11 o'clock at night. We had this Bible study similar to what you showed me the other day, that you have in your pocket. The Bible studies were about an hour. There were questions, and then you looked at the verses that they gave you in the Bible, and you had your answer. It was so fantastic. And the Spirit of God was really ministering to me the graces of redemption. Every moment of all those Bible studies was precious. Precious, precious, precious.
Roger, at that time, your major language was French. You did not speak English, and all of this happened in the French language in Montreal. How long after you became a Seventh-day Adventist, or after you learned of Seventh-day Adventists, did you read the book Great Controversy by Ellen White?
Well, I joined the church. I first had a Bible studies in October of 46. In April of 47, I was baptized into the church. In September of that year, Hilda and I got married. And the French church in Montreal gave us, as a wedding gift, the Conflict of the Ages series. And I had not read the Greek Controversy up to then.
But then you read it.
Yeah.
And what went through your mind when you read the book Great Controversy, thinking back on the experience you'd had maybe just a year or so before?
That's right.
What went through your mind?
This person is inspired. This person has got knowledge that nobody else has on the face of the earth, except, the spiritists that I was mentioning, because it's so unique. See?
Well, I find it very remarkable that they were willing to share the strategy that Satan is working on with this group. Of course, their plan was that it would never get out.
That's right.
Under seal of death.
That's right. Their plan is that you don't have to worry about saying anything about the great master. Because as soon as anybody strays some, the spirits will tell the high priest right away what's taking place. They did with my Bible study that Wednesday night. I studied on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday night, spirit counselor appeared to the high priest and says, you have one of your defectors. He says, that Morneau guy, you're going to get rid of him. Because he's out there studying the Bible with the Adventists, the people that the master hates most on the face of the earth. And the high priest almost had a heart attack. Because he said, I kind of like you. He said, that's what he told my friend. Because I didn't see him after that. But he told my friend to try to convince me to go back, to spirit worship.
Roger, you were 72 hours away from making a full commitment to the elite spirit worship. Mm-hmm. How did God rescue you at that strategic moment?
Well, I'll tell you, I should really go back a couple of weeks in time. As the high priest had talked to us about the advantage of getting initiated in the society on the 31st of October, that night I came home, went to bed, and I couldn't sleep till about 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I had all of this experience of the supernatural that I'd gone through for so many months now, and my Catholic upbringing that I've had, and questions about God. Now I knew there's a God, because the Spiritist made me well aware of that. But I was in a state of terrible unrest. I could not have slept. And without even giving it a thought, somehow, I said, as I was laying on my bed, I said, if there's a God up there that cares for me, help me. That's all I said. Next thing I knew, the alarm clock rang. It was 6:30. It was time for me to get up and go to work. At that time, I had changed employment. I had taken a course in embroidery for the manufacturers of ladies' dresses in Montreal. There's embroidery companies that makes all this, the piping and sequence work and all of this, fancy designs, sure, ladies' dresses. And that's where I was working at the time.
You were just 72 hours away, as Karen mentioned a moment ago. You had prayed, without even realizing what you were doing. God was about to rescue you in a very special way. Tell us about that. What happened that Monday morning?
Well, let's go back to the Friday.
Okay.
Previous to that. I was working for a Jewish firm. And the bosses, one kept the Sabbath, and the other didn't. And Harry, which was the one that didn't, as I was going out to have my cigarette at the afternoon break, he said, Roger, when you come back in, come into my office, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. I came back in, and he said, close the door. I closed the door. He said, I want you to do me a favor. Oh? What do you mean? Well, I'll tell you what. He said, you notice yesterday or a couple of days ago, there was a fellow here that I showed around the shop. And, yeah, I said, yes. Well, he's going to be starting to work here Monday. And he's not just an average guy. He's a Christian, but keeps the Bible Sabbath. I said, go over that again? He says, yes. Like the Jewish people, he keeps the 7-day Sabbath. Saturday is the 7th day of the week. Well, I said, let me tell you, sir. The nuns have told us that there's been a mistake made in the calendar. That actually what shows to be Sunday is the 7th day of the week. Oh no, he says, there wasn't no mistake made in the calendar, he says. Saturday is the 7th day of the week, and you see it on your calendar. And he says it never was changed. And Sunday is the first day of the week. Oh, I said, that's interesting. I said, I'm going to have to go to the library and check this out. Oh, you don't have to, he says. He pulled out his desk drawer open, pulls out his big dictionary, and he looks up Saturday. And it said the 7th day of the week. And he looked at it on Sunday, and he said the first day of the week. Okay. Well, I said, that's pretty interesting. Now, here's what I'd like you to do for me. I'd like you to, first of all, I'm going to have this man work next to you, on the machine next to you. And don't tell him that I want to know what denomination he belongs to. You got to be very tactful. You have all the time in the world, even if it takes a month, he says. He says, I tell you what, he says, it's the craziest thing. He says that I've been thinking about this guy, and I can't get him out of my mind. about this, the fact he's a Christian and keeps the seventh-day Sabbath, keeps the Bible Sabbath. And he said, you know, I got more important things to think about than stuff like that. So he said, I want to find out what denomination he belongs to, and I just did. I said, why didn't you ask him? Well, he said, no, I wouldn't do that. That's too personal. Okay.
So he wanted you to ask him and find out for him.
Find out and not let him know that, you know, the boss was interested to know. So Monday morning came, and the new fellow came in, and the boss introduced him to the people. There was about maybe 50 people working in that plant. And he said, Cyril's an accomplished embroiderer, and we'll be very happy to have him here with us, and, you know, made a little speech. Then he walked him to his new machine, and he says, Roger, meet Cyril, and I shook his hand, and we started to work. And it was not more than about 20 minutes that I was working that my machine started to skip stitches. So what happened? You have to stop and back up where you were. And you know, I was working on sequence. In other words, the sequence come up. There's a row of thread behind it. They're all set up, and it's on a spool. And then the needles put them in there. And when it skips, you got to stop, back up, start over it from where it left off. It wasn't too long that I'd done this 2 or 3 times.
And that really made you happy, I bet.
Man, I was mad. And as a French person, usually they don't go easy on the saints and gods. That was using some language was not that great for Cyril. But anyway, I called the boss over. I said, come and see this machine. I'm having trouble with it. He checked it, worked on it for 5 minutes, you know, work with it. Beautiful. I sit down again, start to work, the same thing happens over again. Harry, after he tried that 2 or 3 times, he said, Joe, come over. He's the old guy that knows everything about everything, you know, in the shop. So he looks at the tensions and adjusts things, and he says, it's working beautiful. Well, I started to work again, and another 20 minutes after, the same thing, and I had to stop the whole thing. By then, you know, it was time to go out for the coffee break.
Cyril and Cynthia, so good to have you folks come down and visit with us for a short time today. And Cyril, I want to start off our visit by just asking you about an experience you had, I believe, almost 45 years ago.
That's right.
You had gone to work at a new embroidery shop in Montreal, Canada. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy that was at the next machine to you that first day you went there. Did you notice anything strange about him?
Yes, I did notice he had some peculiarities that, well, to say the least, they were different. First of all, when he worked at his machine, when he had a little malfunction, he knew how to, well, criticize the machine by using some language that was quite offensive, to me at least. He would curse at the machine, and in both French and English. He was quite a linguist. And when my machine would break, he noticed that I would just fix it and keep on working. There was a difference, and he noticed a difference himself. We were both behaving differently when our machines didn't function right.
Now, so that very first day, there were problems with the machines. Your machine and his machine had problems.
They both had problems.
But you had a chance at the break time to get acquainted with him. And how did he approach you?
Well, he approached me with a question, sort of. He said, I noticed that when your machine gives trouble, you don't get angry. You just fix it and keep on working. And I told him, well, it didn't make sense to get angry with the machine. It's an inanimate object. And he sort of apologized for his getting angry with his machine. And we started a conversation there, and it gave me the opportunity to sort of introduce him to some of the things I had experienced just a few days before.
And what were the things that you had just experienced a few days before?
I was getting some Bible studies from a minister named Elder Warren Taylor. And although I wasn't an Adventist, I was quite moved by those Bible studies because of the fact that as he gave the Bible studies, he kept it quite simple. And he would prove everything he would say, even if it's from the Bible, he would prove it. And in some cases, he proved it from worldly books such as the Encyclopedia Britannica. And he gave good evidence of everything that he was saying was true.
So I started walking out, and I told Sarah, I said, have you ever seen such a crazy thing as this, the trouble that I have with this machine? No, he said, it's a new machine. I said, brand new machine, just a month old. He said, that's very unusual. So we go downstairs, and I said, do you have any suggestions how to fix this problem? No, not really, but he says, I have a suggestion that might help. He says, I heard you, he says, calling upon God, but it was not in the way that I would have liked to hear you talk. He says, go easy on God, he says.
Did that offend you, Roger?
You know, I said, thank you. You did not offend me, because he was pleasant about it. And I said, I said, thank you. I said, I'm sorry if I offended you by my language. He says, it didn't bother me. I said, by the way, I said, this is the opening. You're quite a religious man, I understand. Yeah, he said, I read the Bible and go to church. That's great. I said, what denomination do you belong to? Well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Excuse me? Repeat that again? He says, yeah, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
Did that shock you?
Well, the word Adventist shocked me. The Adventist, you see, I had heard so much about the Adventist, but Seventh-day Adventist, I had never heard the name before. I said, what does it signify, the name? He says, well, we're 7-day observers. We believe in the Bible Sabbath, that God has blessed a particular day of the week and has sanctified it, and has put a special blessing on there, and that we ought to count our blessings on the 7th day and, give God the honor that is due to his holy name. Is that any difference between what some people call the Adventists and Seventh-day Adventists? Oh no, it's just the same people. Most people just talk about the Adventists, and people know that they're talking about the Seventh-day Adventists.
Then your interest was really piqued.
Now I said, man, what a unique thing to have happened to me, that I meet one of these guys.
You're together out there at your first break time, and you're discussing the language on the job when the machines had broken down, but you had an opportunity to begin to share some of this newfound faith that you had been discovering.
Right.
Did you find him to be interested, open?
Well, what really happened was he would ask questions, and I found out later that the reason he asked questions was when I went to get the job, I was so impressed with Elder Taylor's Bible studies that I told the employer right away that I didn't work on the Sabbath. He said, well, that's all right, you don't have to work on Sunday at all. I said, no, Saturday. So being a Jew, he became rather interested. And he told Roger, Roger told me later on, check this fellow and find out why he keeps my Jewish Sabbath. So Roger's questions were motivated by the fact that he was told to check. And the more questions Roger would ask, the more interested he became himself. So as he became more interested, and I told him more, he suddenly said, I want to hear more about your religion. And I said, okay, this weekend. He said, no, tonight.
So we talked about a number of things. And after lunch, I told him, I said, I want to see you at 3 o'clock. Again, I want to have another question for you. So 3 o'clock came along, we had the coffee break, and many things had passed through my mind. And I knew that if I get involved with religion, the Spirit is going to destroy me. So I've been assured, we've all been assured of that. You don't deviate from the will of the spirits, otherwise you're nothing, your history. So I told him, I said, Cyril, would you show me out of the Bible the things you told me today if I went to your house? He says, yeah. Yeah, he says, yeah, I'd be glad to. He says, when, next week sometime? No, not next week, tonight.
Did he look surprised when you said that?
Yeah, he's surprised. He said, what's the big hurry? I said, I can't tell you why. But it has to be tonight or never. He said, you serious? I said, yeah. And you can't tell me why it has to be tonight? I'll tell you the reason why. He says, I would like to have you come another night, because I have my collection of jazz records that somebody's coming to look over. He had been collecting jazz records for years. And he said, I have somebody's interested to buy them. But he said, well, I said, well, forget about it then. And he said, man, He said, you really mean what you say? That you want to see these things in the Bible? I said, sure. Okay, he says, come to my place 7 o'clock tonight. Give me his address. So that evening, 7 o'clock sharp, I rang the doorbell.
Did that startle you?
It startled me because it was fortunate I had 28 Bible studies for busy people, something I just bought. And I ran home, Cynthia and I were married at this time. And I ran home and I told Cynthia, we have to give some Bible studies because this fellow's coming tonight. So I went through the first couple of Bible studies as quickly as I could and got myself familiarized with them. And we got all ready, and sure enough, he came. And we sat in that room, the room that we talked about that burned, and we started those Bible studies. And he was very interested.
Cynthia, that first night that you had your Bible studies with Roger, how many studies did you actually do with him?
We did 4.
On the first night?
On the first night. We started promptly at 7, and as we went through, with everything in detail, in full detail. And we thought that, oh, this is just going to last the evening, and that would be the end of it. And then he said, no, he says, let's do the next one. So each one, so we didn't finish until about 11:30 or quarter to 12. And when we finished, he'd sit around and talk. By the way, he was a chain smoker. The room was covered with smoke. We could hardly see the Bibles in our laps. And we had discussed this prior about him smoking. And so we decided, we prayed about it, and we asked the Lord that even though each time he came, the room was just heavenly, full of smoke, that we will read his word and that he will take care of the smoke. And I happen to be allergic to cigarette smoke, and we were all huddled together. It was really something to see us.
28 Bible studies in a period of 1 week, 7 days.
7 days, 4 hours a night.
4 hours per evening, yeah.
28 Bible studies. Now,
They didn't plan this. So as we chatted, and I just met Cynthia, now Cyril told me I got to explain things to you a little bit. I am not a baptized member of the Seventh Adventist Church. I'm just studying into the church doctrines with the minister. He says, my wife is a Seventh Adventist. But he said, now I think I'm going to be baptized also be a Seventh Adventist. But I said, I'm not one right now. Now he says, my wife is the one that really knows the Bible. I don't know much about it. And I think that she's got the right study for us tonight. He says, it'll take about an hour. Can you spare that much time? Oh, I said, evening is yours. Well, she had a set of Bible studies that were entitled 28 Bible Studies for Busy People. That was the title of the series. She pulled one out and she says, now, we could see here, there's the different questions. The first one was on the Word of God. And she read the question and said, then we can find the verses in the Bible that gives us the answer. And the next question, she said, would you like that? I said, beautiful, let's go. So Cyril was sitting next to me with his Bible because he was able to find where it was. And I had never opened a Bible in my life, never. So, because I never had access to it, let's put it this way. And that's where it started, on the Word of God. After the Bible thing was over, he says, well, did you find it interesting? I said, most interesting, very interesting. I said, what's the next study coming up? Well, he said, the next study, Daniel 2, prophecy of Daniel the prophet, 2, on the world events, predicting the different great world empires that were to come into existence in times ahead. And I said, really? That's very interesting. I said, how long would that one take? Oh, she'll take about an hour. She says, you have between 20 to 25 questions, he says, you know. So I said, let's have it now. Oh, well, she said, no. She said, when could you come back? I said, why come back?
Did she look surprised?
She looks very surprised because she looked at her husband. And he looked at me. And I said, hey, you guys like the Bible or are you getting tired? No, we like to study the Bible. I said, let's have another Bible study. It's only 8 o'clock, you see.
And at that time you were a smoker, weren't you?
Oh, a smoker. You can't say that again. I was like a chain smoker, you see. And when I had accomplished something worthwhile, I used to reward myself with a cigar 2 or 3 times a week. And this is what the love of God, the power of the love of God operates in the lives of those that the Lord is trying to bless, and in the lives of those that are bringing the blessing. Now this did not take place. First of all, we kept on studying. We had 4 Bible studies that evening. And when it came to 9 o'clock, we had Daniel 2 over with. I said, what's the next Bible study? And she said, well, the one that we're going to have, will you come on the weekend? Could you come on the weekend? I said, yeah. I said, I can come on the weekend. What is the title of it? She gave me the title. I said, man, that's interesting. It's only 9 o'clock. Let's have it now. So Cyril looks at her, with very surprised look on his face. And Cynthia, she looked at him. And I said, what's going on between the two of you? It's like you have a conspiracy that says that we're not going to study the Bible with this guy more than, than an hour or 2. But she said, let me be honest with you. Our minister, Pastor Taylor, has been giving us instruction on how to give Bible studies. Because Cynthia says, I never have given Bible studies. And we really wanted to know how to give Bible studies to people that ask us the reason of the hope that is in us. And he's told us exactly how to do it. You have 1 Bible study per week. If the people are exceedingly interested, you could have 1 in the middle of the week, another one. But never more than that. And she says, we've already passed our quota.
So the reason, Roger, for their hesitancy was not the fact that you were blowing smoke in their face.
Oh, no.
It was because they were trying to follow the instructions that their pastor had given, and you were asking them to break all those rules.
That's right.
Do you think they could sense your urgency?
Sarah and Cynthia told me later, yes. They said there's something very unusual about this man, Cynthia told her husband, because they went to get water, and to get me a glass of water, and she went in the kitchen to get something else, whatever it is, and she said, what do you think of him? And Cyril said, there's something very unusual about this man. He said, you want to study the Bible? Let's study the Bible. We won't tell about Elder Taylor. Let's not say a word to Elder Taylor. We're going to ruin the whole thing.
You're going to keep it a secret.
Because the minister had said, you give people a spiritual indigestion, and they'll never want to open the Bible again. You understand?
But this shows that there are some times when someone's appetite for it is so strong that you have to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, that's it. And they had prayed about this thing. Now, Cyril had told his wife, this man is coming for Bible study at 7 o'clock tonight for a Bible study. And he smokes. He's a smoke fiend. What are we going to do? Should we tell him not to smoke in our home? He said, if we do that, I'm afraid he's not going to stay for the Bible study.
What would have happened if they had asked you not to smoke?
I would have said, I'm sorry. You're not my kind of people. You see? You're too reserved for me. I'm sorry. And still to this day, I thank God for the leading of the Holy Spirit that at that crucial time moved in there and inspired these people to say, wouldn't you die, Cyril, for us to save a soul for Christ? Cynthia said to her husband. He said, yeah. It's not going to kill us, even if we inhale all the smoke that he puts out, right? Because they had prayed about it, and then they had thought about it, and then when it came to be 7:15, he said, what are we going to do about the smoking? Are we going to tell him not to smoke or what? And then when she came out and she said, let's put up with it. Well, we had that 3rd Bible study. Now it's 10 o'clock. And I said, by the way, what's the next title? And she told me about it. My goodness, this is a beautiful Bible study. I said, let's have it. And he said, really, Roger, we've studied too much tonight. We're never going to be able to remember these things. Oh, I said, you'd be surprised. I got a mind like a sponge for the things that I like. He said, you're enjoying yourself. I said, never heard anything like this in my life. Let's have another study. What time do people go to bed? First of all, I don't want to, infringe on your regular habits of resting yourself. And, well, he said, we go to bed 11 o'clock. Beautiful. I said, go on, Cynthia. And Cheryl says, go on, Cynthia. And we had another Bible study. Now the Bible studies are over. And I said to myself, if I'm still alive, I want to be here tomorrow night.
Did you seriously doubt whether you would be alive the following night?
I felt sure I was going to be killed, going to be destroyed in some kind of an accident. Because I've heard of so many cases. So I knew that I was not, this is the way I felt. I was not going to be alive tomorrow night. If for some reason I'm alive, I want to be back here with study the Bible with these people, see? So I said, what are you people doing tomorrow night? Not too much. What about 7 o'clock? Another Bible study. And she looked at her husband, and he looks at her, you know, and he said, hey, we won't tell Elder Taylor. We won't tell him a word about it.
We'll just do it.
We'll just do it. He says, we'll be here at 7 o'clock tomorrow night waiting for you. The next night, man, I was there. 4 more Bible studies, see, and more smoke.
This has been part 1 of a trip into the supernatural. The conclusion of this exclusive interview is contained in part 2.